Anthea Rowe of Exmplify Consulting is with me today. Welcome, Anthea.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for making the drive. We met. I always like talking about how I made this connection. We met when you were at StarTech, right? They make little devices that allow you to connect with other devices. And now that I say that, I think they'd be a great sponsor for this show because that's what I do. It's all about connecting. Yeah. So you went on to 3M for a few years. What did you do at 3M, for instance?
Yeah, I was there for 2.5 years.
Right.
So I ran the communications function, which was the charitable giving, $1.3 million charitable giving budget.
Right.
Crisis communications. So if we were being sued or, if there were any major customer complaints or product issues, right. And then employees, what the executives were communicating to employees.
And you were there for a while, right? Three years?
2.5 years.
2.5, 3 years. That's a long
almost
time.
3. Yeah.
After you were at 3M, you went out on your own. So why did you want to go out on your own?
Two things. I realized that my career path to date wasn't what I wanted to keep pursuing. So I had been saying to colleagues for 5 or 6 years, I don't see myself, rising through the ranks in corporate communications. I don't want to be a chief communications officer. And they were like, well, then what? Like, what are you doing? Why, isn't that what it's all about?
Right.
And I thought, I don't know. And then at the same time, I was experiencing myself and witnessing around me a phenomenon of really hardworking women, working harder and harder, but stalling in their careers.
Right.
And I wondered what that was all about, and I wanted to do something about it. So I kind of took my background in PR and my interest in women's advancement at work and put them together and was like, I want to help women advance at work.
So here's a direct quote from your LinkedIn page. Okay. So I help mid-career women get promoted, personal branding, communication, workplace performance, leadership. Do I have that right?
Yes.
That's, I think,
yep.
Yes. So women in mid-career,
yeah.
They come to you for advice, perhaps, for guidance. If I could overgeneralize for a moment, is there a common issue or problem, quote unquote, mid-career women come to you with? Is there a common issue? And what is it?
From their perspective, the issue that most women come to me with who end up becoming clients is they feel overworked, undervalued, and underutilized. Right. So they're not coming to me saying, I want to earn more. They're actually saying, I could be doing more for my company or for any other company, and I'm not, and I don't understand why, right? It's like you're kind of sitting on the bench and you're just like, put me in coach. And they're just like, no, it's okay. Like we've got our lineup. So feeling undervalued, wanting to do more and having these ambitions that don't match up with what they're actually doing.
Right.
So that's what they come to me with.
Right. What can you do to fix that? That's not a simple fix. You need to talk to these people for a while, right?
Yeah. Oops, I'm going to hit your microphone here. Yeah, so there are things that we can do to fix it. And that's, my services.
Right.
So individuals will hire me. And it's a couple things. It's first, the biggest one is recognizing, like, what's made you successful so far?
Right.
And turns out that that's not making you successful going forward, right? So our career can kind of be chunked up, and you have, you're talking about your daughter and, going on to a professional degree, and there's, how you do in school, and then what works for you there, right? And
I'm going to ask you some advice about my daughter later.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help.
Since you brought it up.
I give free advice wherever I can.
Free advice. That's why you're here.
Exactly.
To give me free advice.
So we have school, and then the things that are rewarded, right? And what you get good marks for. And then early career still tends to be similar. It's like if you're a subject matter expert, in videography or in graphic design or in writing media releases or whatever, you're still basically valued for like doing a good job of your technical work and working hard. As you get into mid-career, differentiators are about your understanding of the business and your ability to communicate that you understand the business.
Right.
And what I'm learning from research and from personal experience and from talking to women, people who identify as women, is that they just keep like doing more of what they were good at and what they were praised for, but then being like, why am I not getting promoted? Well,
Right.
you're not going to get promoted for the things you were good at over here. You need to have new skills. So we work on those new skills.
So why women? Did you just see an underserved niche that you think you do well in? Is that
Yeah. So combination of personal experience and so sense making around my own career and being like, I had bosses, throughout my early career talking to me like my career trajectory
like
was
mentors
that.
and things? Or?
Yeah, yeah. And then I felt like it kind of went like this. And it wasn't necessarily attributed to having kids. Like I was, working full time every time I came back from mat leave and stuff. And so personal experience. And then I started researching it to be like, what am I doing wrong? And finding all this evidence of ways in which, we think we live and work in a meritocracy and we really don't, right? And so instead of getting mad about that, I just was like, well, what can we do?
Right. So, I mean, I see this stuff in the paper sometimes. Like, what do you put on what you've mentioned you've got more than one kid, right? Child. Mm-hmm. What's your advice to people when they have that gap on their resume potentially? Sometimes people don't come back after whatever it is these days, a year, right? Mm-hmm. You could take 3 years off. I don't blame you for doing that. It's important work. Parenthood. But like, what's your advice to women in the workforce when they've left it for a few years?
It's not a problem if you can demonstrate that you have proof of the skills and proof of accomplishments in the field that you're applying for, right? So yeah, 1 year, not a big deal. 5 to 7 years. The challenge is not why were you not working? It's prove to us that you understand the current industry needs, right? Prove to us that you can help our company, digitize their marketing. Prove to us that you can, right? So that's where it's really the onus is on the individual applying to a job to know, like to stay current, even if you're not working, to know what skills are needed, what experience is needed, and do about it.
So you actually, I think you wrote an article or maybe something on your website. You call it the mid-career stall, right? So why does it happen, and what can you do to prevent or fix it?
Yeah, so the mid-career stall speaks to the what I mentioned earlier about how the assumption that just knowing the technical parts of your job really well and working really hard is enough.
Right.
What, for some reason, women tend not to realize, as well as maybe their male colleagues, is you have to spend, at least 20% of your working time, your career effort, on letting people know what you do.
Right.
Like, the aphorism now is
Promoting yourself.
Yeah, self-promotion. And I mean, all my clients cringe and get really nervous at the word self-promotion because it is it's fraught too for women. Mm-hmm. Right? We're kind of taught to be modest and stuff. So it's real. Is
that a gender thing or is it a Canadian thing or?
Yeah, it's
I used to, but even in my own site, it's not a natural thing for me. But I used to call it shameless self-promotion because it is something I'm not 100% comfortable with. But it has to be done, right?
It has to be done.
You have to let people know that your services exist, et cetera, right?
Yeah, and I'd argue like our interpretation of shameless as Canadians is probably really different than how an American, or even an American on the East Coast versus an American on the West Coast, because there's even differences there.
Right.
Yeah, culturally, across gender, geography, there's just different expectations of how much people will talk about themselves, right?
Right.
So it's not exclusive to women, 100%. I have male clients.
Oh, you do? I was going to make a joke. Yeah. I was going to say, so is it just women? Or if I came to you with a bucket full of gold, would you so I'm glad you laughed at that.
I would happily.
It's either that or you throw stuff at me, right? So,
yeah.
So okay. So men, women, but you just specialize in women because that's your experience, right? You can relate to your clients a little bit better.
Yeah, and because there are, it comes down to we all have default communication styles. And we don't tend to question them because there are defaults, right? The way
Right.
we have a conversation, they are, like you said, affected by where we live. Canadians tend to wait longer for someone to finish a sentence before jumping in, but it's not always universal. So we have default styles. We assume that they're just the way they are. What women tend to not realize is that their default styles often undermine their credibility at work. So, and I just said, if a woman tends to be self-deprecating, tends to look down, not make eye contact, tends to speak quietly because they have smaller vocal cords and higher voices.
Right.
They literally don't get hurt as much. Like these things in a culture that, most workplaces are, predominantly male led, right? The number of leaders. And so they tend to value more masculine communication styles. So I just teach awareness of that and give my female clients and male clients awareness of when you go into a situation, who's the person with power? What kind of communication style do they have? And what's going to help you get heard?
Right.
So knowing that, it doesn't mean, oh, you women are supposed to talk and act like a man. It doesn't. It's just saying, if you use hedges, like filler words, if you speak really softly, don't be surprised when men interrupt you, right?
Yes.
And then what can you do about that? So, to answer your question about, men and women, I do have many male clients who just tend to have more like softer voices or are less comfortable promoting themselves and look around or wonder why they haven't gotten, a raise or a promotion at work.
You write or you say there are moral and social reasons many women struggle to talk about their own work. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Morality fascinates me. I swear I'm going to have to do a PhD on it. That we tend to value modesty, especially in women, and expect it. And we tend to punish women who are perceived as immodest in the sense of talking about themselves or bragging, right? I did a fascinating workshop with some Girl Guides. I told you my eldest daughter is in Girl Guides, where I was teaching them to talk about accomplishments, and they were so uncomfortable with it and said, it feels terrible, I'm bragging. And then we tend to socialize boys generally to talk about their accomplishments, and even the way they see themselves, or if you see boys like on the playground, right? They'll be like, I can throw the ball farther than you. I can throw it farther than you. I'm faster than you. And that's okay, right? That's an accepted kind of figuring out of their hierarchy. Yes. Girls, if you tell a girl that you're better than her at something, like you're not going to be her friend, right? And so some of that socialization, which nobody intends, tends to happen. So I think I've circled away from your original question.
Well, you said moral and social reasons.
Yeah. So
when you say moral, is that
moral? And maybe moral.
I think of religion when I hear the word moral.
Yeah, so maybe it's more about values or virtue, like. So the virtue of modesty, of being, demure, and self-deprecating and not bragging is, a lot of people socialized as women tend to be praised for that, right? Like you didn't speak up, you didn't brag. So then if that's what you've been told is the right way to behave.
Well, young ladies act in a certain way, and that's reinforced from the crib, basically, like onwards, right? Like I could see how that could happen.
Decorum, kind of, It's like, even photos like from paparazzi of like celebrities getting out of the car and they're trying to get, shots up their skirt or something, and it's like still reflects somehow on the celebrity that if she, wasn't wearing underwear or something, and it's like, well, like we're valuing, like her modesty is very important. And so this kind of, you have to be modest, goes against what is the reality in a workplace, which is like we operate in capitalism, which by definition is about competition, right? And that plays out in companies where, you're competing to, for a limited number of roles potentially, but you also want to show like, I have a good idea that's going to help the company, or I have results that have, grown sales. If your values of being a good person go against what gets rewarded, you're not gonna do what gets rewarded, right? So you're not going to talk about yourself. You're going to say, "Oh, my work should speak for itself." Actually, I have a great personal story that illustrates that. So modesty being a virtue, my boss and I were standing around one day catching a quick like tea in between meetings, and we were talking about our male colleagues who we were like, oh my gosh, like it seems like they spend all their time creating presentations for the executives, right? And we were like, not just laughing at it, but feeling like smug and virtuous because, well, we're too busy doing real work to just spend time presenting to execs. And then ask me, like, so this was three women standing around feeling good about ourselves because we were like working hard and not talking about ourselves. Well, fast forward 6 months, like ask me out of those two groups of people, like who got huge promotions, moved across like to another country, family paid to relocate, right? It wasn't the women who were feeling smug because they were virtuous. It was the men who very justifiably were communicating like their projects, their results to people who had power to promote them, right? So here we were being like, we're good people. We don't look for, we don't brag. We just do the work. Well, like who's winning, right? So
Right.
that's when I was like questioning what our values or whether it's morality that may be too intense,
Well,
right?
what's your biggest success story, would you say? I think you said something on your
Yeah.
website. It's not typical, but someone got a job within
Oh my gosh,
10 days or something. And
they're so great. I mean, I love all my clients. They're incredible when they finally kind of trust themselves.
right.
Yeah, so one client was like, "Oh, I never get around to updating my resume, and someone's been inviting me for a year to interview informally with their company, and I should really get my act together." So I said, "Okay, great, we can do that." And then I couldn't get a date on the calendar, and then she called me up and was like, "I have an opportunity to interview with the CEO of a tech company, like in a week." So we in 5 days were like,
So you
we'll
coached
figure
her
out-
up. You coached her up, basically.
Totally. Yeah. I was like, we get your career story, buttoned up, great resume. And she got the job. So she went from a director to VP, got stock options, all that stuff, crazy, compensation. But actually the one that I'm more proud of is someone who had been in the same job for 17 years and was like mid-career and kind of felt like, I don't know whether I could find something different. I should probably just stay here. I think I have a pretty good thing going. But the culture was not a good fit. She was literally sad every day, like just didn't like the way people were treated. And I was like, you can expect to work somewhere where you feel good going to work and not have to take a pay cut. And so worked on her on like career story again, and then proactively targeting companies. So instead of saying, well, what's available for jobs? Just like, what would be your ideal company, even if they don't have anything posted?
Right.
And she applied to 2 jobs,
Right.
which is insane. I would never promise this. And she got the one, and she got a 42% pay increase. The culture is lovely. Like she feels respected and valued, and she's meeting interesting people. It's more diverse. And she's just like, who would have thought? Like I could have a culture that I value more and feel good about every day. And I'm getting 42% more. So I think that's the thing is like not feeling that you have to settle. There's this kind of assumption of like, if I'm going to do work I love, I'm going to have to, be a pauper and not make much money. Or if I'm going to love the company I work for, I can't expect. And it's like, no, you should expect both.
So in those two instances, what's your process? Do you try to meet and really get to know the person and just try to bond with them and then hype them up a bit, give them some confidence if they don't have it, or just direct them, okay, we're going to company X and this is what you should focus on, kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like probably 80% technical and then 20% kind of confidence building.
Do you rehearse? Do you rehearse it at all? Or
Yeah, we do a little bit of that. Honestly, most
interviews?
of it is the resume. So it sounds super
Right.
boring. And I'm not like a recruiter. My background's not HR, but I treat the resume, my background's PR. I treat it like a news release. Like, so what? What's the headline for each job? What's interesting?
Right.
And we go through what I talked about earlier, where I'm like, okay, this isn't about you.
So literally rewriting the resume.
Literally rewriting the resume.
Right.
And so for each
Right.
one, I'm like, okay, you worked at this communications company, like telecoms, selling kind of server type of stuff. Great. What'd you do? Oh, well, while I was there, they were trying to go from a mid-market, like they were in 2 small cities. they wanted to expand across the US. I launched a bunch of guerrilla marketing campaigns, literally did like literature drops and like these cool programs. I don't remember them all. In 8 different cities. Next thing you know, a year later, that company has a footprint and sales in those 8 cities. Cool. So it's like taking that, it's not about you. It's, counterintuitively, your resume is about what did you do for a company. Rewrite the resume, and that takes a while. It takes like 3 or 4 weeks or, 1-hour sessions. Because at the end of it, they have what I call your career story, which is like, not just about a resume, but it's really changing the way you think about your career, right? So like maybe an example for you, and I don't know if this is the case, but instead of being like, I'm an experienced videographer who, can do, on-site or, editing, whatever, maybe instead it's like, I have helped, 25 people have their voice heard in, and have built their expertise in 30 industries or something, or you know what I mean? Yep. It's like, who have you helped and why? So yeah, the process is a lot of like, let's break down your resume and then like build it back up again. And then
so who have you helped and why is sort of an interesting.
Who have you helped and why is like, yeah.
Way of something to grab onto there. That's
so then they've got a resume that like, and as they go through the resume, I ask questions like, so what did you love about working there? Or what did you hate? Where would you love? And then in that process, they start realizing like, oh yeah, like I was in alcohol sales, for most of my career, but I really want to do something less, or healthier, like something that's maybe not as, one client, that was the case, had been successful, but was like, I think maybe I want to look at like selling kombucha or like specialty juices or whatever, right? Yes. Still, like I had a client who was just trying to get just another job. And then he said, you know what, as I've been reflecting on this, Anthea, my dream would be to work in New York or Chicago. And this is someone based in Calgary. And I was like, cool, let's work on that.
So like, your clients, not geographically limited to Western Ontario. No, so anywhere in Canada, it's an online world now.
Or most of my clients are in the US.
So you have American clients, Canadian clients.
Australian.
Really?
UK.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So I wouldn't have known that. You got to tell me. You have to.
I know. What else did I not share?
You have to promote yourself.
Self-promote. Shameless self-promotion.
What's the feedback you get from your clients? Like, are they happy as a clam that they found you kind of thing? Or it's because it does sound like half therapy, half career counseling, or half resume building, or I've run out of halves there.
There's a lot of halves, yeah.
So what's the feedback you get? Because you've got nice things. People have said nice things to you about you on your. Did you make the right decision to do this?
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So I'd say the best measurement of, is my work effective are the people who come to me achieving their goals, right? So if someone says, I want to work somewhere where I like the culture, did I help them get a role in a company where they like the culture? Yes. If someone says, I want more seniority, like I want a higher title, or I want more pay. And so far, with almost no exceptions, my clients after working with me have gotten that. So yeah, I'd say like the objective measures are like, yes, it's working.
Must be very satisfying for you. When there's a good result, right?
It is. But honestly, what I find more satisfying is when the clients say, I feel like you really understand what I'm going through. I realized I'm not alone. Because
you've experienced it yourself, perhaps?
And actually, it's even less my story. And I've even connected some of my clients with each other. And you mentioned kind of being like therapy. It's, you start to wonder, is it me? Right? If you're in an organization and you think you're working really hard and it's not turning to results, you start to think like, I must just be doing something wrong. And then when you find out like, oh, other people are experiencing it too, you realize, oh, okay. And then when they work with me and realize I can do things about it, some of the best things clients have said is, I felt like you really understood me. I have a totally different attitude towards my career now. And like the best praise is, if someone goes into their new job and starts it even feeling different about it, right? Rather than feeling like, I hope I'm good enough, or I hope they like me.
Right. So if we wanted to get in touch with you, you have a website. I guess we can. What's the website?
Yeah, it's exmplify.com. Exmplify, EXMPLIFY. Or on LinkedIn, Anthea Rowe. I don't think there are too many other Anthea Rowes, especially in London, Canada.
I'll put the website at the bottom when you say it. So thanks for coming, Anthea. I really appreciate the long drive here. It's nice to do stuff in person, is it not?
I love it. I love it so much. Thank you so much for letting me come back to you a year and a half or a year after you offered. I appreciate the chance to talk about this kind of stuff, and you asked really, thoughtful, really insightful questions.
Yeah, they were okay. They were okay.
You care about the issue.
Well, thanks for coming. I do appreciate it. It's a lot of effort to come, and I do.
Thanks for having me.